We are into Eden Park week. Who is going to win this weekend in the Rugby Championship between the All Blacks and the Springboks? Who's going to win it? Are you going to back New Zealand as the home side, as a team with all that weight of history behind them, that incredible record that has gone on for decades and decades and decades? Or are you fancying a wounded Springbok side that maybe you're backing to win this weekend because you know how good this team can be, rather than the body of evidence we've seen in front of us in the first two rounds of the Rugby Championship? But I thought, do you know what? Let's get into it. We don't have any team news yet. That's going to come later on in the week. But give me your thoughts. This was a fixture that we all had circled when the fixtures were released. This was the one that we were all looking at, really. There was so much build up to. It is here. And despite the fact that these two sides are coming into it in perhaps a little bit different form than we would have maybe anticipated, it is still so intriguing. So Springbok fans, All Black fans, give me your views in the comments. What are your thoughts ahead of the game? What I was thinking I'd do is maybe go through some of the big questions for these two sides. That's going to kind of revolve around selection. But yeah, just give me your views down below. Also, like the video and hit subscribe, because actually I checked just before recording this. We need 85 more subs to take us up to 18,000 on the channel. So let's see if we can get there. If 85 of you hit subscribe, then that'd be wicked. I think there's real interest and intensity this week in this game, despite where both teams are. I know Rassie Erasmus has spoken about this. It is the kind of game that I can imagine for both of those camps does just feel a bit different. And at this level, teams always come out, and when you chat to them or when you hear them speak, it's sticking to their processes, going through it as a normal game, all that sort of thing. It must feel different. The two biggest rivals, the two biggest nations in the sport in terms of success, going head to head at Eden Park, all of that history on the line. And is that intensity and importance reflected in the South Africa team news? No Tuesday team news from the Springboks. We're hearing it's going to be Thursday. Let's see if Rassie pulls a surprise and gives us the team news on Wednesday. Trying to guess what Rassie Erasmus is going to do, certainly in terms of selection, but even when he announces his team is a bit of a fool's errand. But is that just a bit of a reflection of how big this week is, how big this game is? Maybe it's also a reflection of some of the question marks the Springboks are trying to work out. Or maybe it is just a little bit of mind games from Rassie to get the week started. Because you may have seen this. I saw the short video that the Springboks put up on their YouTube. He was in there saying they could go 4-4 on the bench. They could do different things. Could they go with Andre Esterhuizen as their back row cover? So yeah, the fun has very much started. But I think if we look at big questions, I suppose not so much a question, but it's a big weekend for both of these teams. Massive weekend. It was always going to be massive, don't get me wrong, but it feels really important for both of these teams at this moment in time, in that I think it completely changes the trajectory of their season depending on what happens. It feels really important, I think, for Scott Robertson in year 2 of his tenure. Question marks around the team, question marks of selection, question mark of game plan, of execution, of all that sort of thing. It'd be a real statement to continue that history and that record they've got at Eden Park, to beat the Springboks, to put themselves in a great position to kick on and win back the Rugby Championship. And then for the Springboks, I suppose the question is the drop-off in level in performance that we've seen against Australia, was that purely a blip, as we probably expect it was, or is it a sign of a bigger issue? If you lose to New Zealand, all of a sudden it really changes probably your ability to defend your title. You've lost at Eden Park. I just think for both teams, it's almost a fork in the road, it feels to me. So big weekend for both the sides. What about selection? Shall I start with the Springboks? What are the big questions there? I think it's so intriguing that Faf de Klerk is back in the squad. Now, Rassie has said he is there as backup. I guess technically he's probably 4th choice scrum half. But is there a chance we see Faf play? Do they partner him with Pollard? And as unlikely as it seems because he hasn't been involved up to this point, I think we saw the Springboks strip back the game plan in beating the Aussies in that second test. I wonder whether we're going to see them do similar at Eden Park. Away, good opposition, tough place to go, strip it back to the game plan that we know they're comfortable with and how good they are at executing that. And out of all the options, Grant Williams or Cobus Reinach or Faf, who's the best scrum half to execute that game plan? And I think there's a pretty good argument that it's Faf de Klerk. Faf de Klerk and Pollard, the tried and tested, they're your 9 and 10 for this game. Maybe it's unlikely because Faf's only just been called up, but I think there is a real chance that. I certainly think there's a chance of him being involved. Elsewhere, what are you looking at? Sia Khaleesi is probably going to return. So is he going to play 8? We saw him play 8 previously before picking up that injury. 8 for me is a fascinating position for the Boks because I'm not quite sure who the best option is at this moment in time. They've got loads of different back row options, but I wonder whether we're going to see Sia Khaleesi play at 8 again and then Van Staden plays 6, Peter Steff then at 7, or quite how they mix it up. But I think there's a chance Khaleesi is there. And then you've got question marks. Is it Fassi again at fullback? Is it someone else that comes in? Do you go Moody again on the wing? We've obviously get the injuries to Edwill van der Merwe and Kurtley Aronser, so they're not a part of the squad. A few different question marks, in particular in that back line, I think, for the Springboks. And how do they approach it? I think we see them continue to strip the game back, lots of kicking, win it up front, be physical, be horrible to play against, all that stuff that's the DNA of South African rugby that's brilliant. I think we see them continue to revert to that this weekend. What about the All Blacks? What are the big questions, selection-wise? I think one of the most concerning things, I've spoken about this on the channel, is the amount of questions for Scott Robertson in terms of selection at this point. I think 9 is a question. If Roygaard's back, do you bring him in? He's the best 9 by a mile. You've got Finlay Christie, you've got Cortez Ratimer, you've got Roygaard. I think if Roygaard is fit enough, he comes back in. How fit is he? Is he able to start, or is he going to be coming off the bench? Do you go with Christie over Cortez Ratimer? Do you stick with Ratimer, who has been starting? 9, I think, is a big question mark. And in fact, there's a few across the back line. What do you do in the centres? Do you go back to Rico Ioane, or do you stick with Proctor? I would be tempted personally to stick with Proctor. I don't know why. My gut instinct there for Scott Robertson is stick to your guns at this moment in time. This isn't the moment to panic and tear it all up, which I know loads of All Blacks fans will disagree with, but I'm just not sure Rico back into the centres is the solution here. So I'll be tempted to stick with Proctor. And what about on the wing? Is Caleb Clarke going to return? Brilliant season in Super Rugby. Gives you he's a bit more assured under the high ball, isn't he, than Sevu Reece. So does Caleb Clarke come back in onto the wings? You've then got questions in the back row, I suppose, as well. What's the correct combination there? Options with Tamaiti Williams and so on and so forth to start in the front row. But for me, the big questions are kind of in that back line for the All Blacks. Regardless of all of that, I think it's going to be so blockbuster. I think it's going to be blockbuster. I think it's an absolute testament, this, to... We all probably thought, before a ball was kicked this year in the Rugby Championship, New Zealand will be 2 from 2, South Africa will be 2 from 2, and then they go head-to-head at Eden Park, and that would just be incredible. Despite the fact they both lost the game, I still think this is an amazing matchup. A really fascinating matchup, because I still think the All Blacks on their day are an exceptional team. I know there's a fair bit of negativity from what I've seen in New Zealand in terms of the reaction to that defeat in Argentina, which I get, but I still think they're an exceptional team on their day. I just don't think they're necessarily consistent at the moment. And I think there are a few too many question marks in that team in terms of selection at the moment. And then the Springboks, I'm not willing to write the Springboks off just yet. After 1 defeat and 2 pretty poor performances against Australia, we have seen how good this team is. But if they were that poor again, A, if they were as poor as they've been against Australia, I think they lose quite comfortably. But B, if they're that poor again, I think it is probably fair to start asking some questions over them. So what do they look like this weekend? And I think one of the great things actually of these sorts of matchups is the best teams bring the best out of each other, don't they? And even with what I've been saying with the Springboks stripping back the game plan, I still think we are going to get an absorbing, compelling test match. I think it's going to be physical. I think it's going to be pretty tight. I think it's going to be a real arm wrestle. I think it's going to be, in some ways, maybe a bit of a game for the purists. I think the kick battle aerially, tactically, that side of the game is going to be so key. But I cannot wait for it. And who is going to win? I genuinely don't know at this point in the week. On the one hand, I am thinking New Zealand at home, South Africa haven't been amazing. And then on the other hand, wounded Springboks. Chasing history. A team that find their best when it matters most. World Cups and so on and so forth. Tight games, 1-point wins. So I'm not sure. Maybe we'll wait to the team news before I answer that question. Anyone willing to stick their neck out? Who wins at Eden Park this weekend? Toss of a coin at the moment, isn't it? I'll leave it there. Drop a comment down below. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like the video as well. Play into the algorithm and help boost the video to as many people as possible on YouTube. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next one.